The following is a presentation of the Pro Wrestling Report. Television, radio, internet, the world. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report, the post-show for the WWE 2011 Draft. We're here live on Blog Talk Radio. Damian Nelson of the Pro Wrestling Report. Normally on Monday nights, yes, we are live on 540 ESPN out of Milwaukee, but that show will be airing Wednesday night, 11 Eastern, 10 Central. We're bringing you this very special post show looking at the very eventful and newsworthy WWE Draft here tonight that aired on the USA Network. We're going to be taking your comments and your phone calls during this post show. The number that you can call to be a part of the program is 347-996-5278. Again, that's 347-996-5278. 347-996-5278. We've also got our chat room open right here on Blog Talk Radio, and a lot of discussion there, especially with the swerve that was just played on all of the viewing audience. An early surprise draft pick going to SmackDown and then back to Raw, but at the end of the night, SmackDown still came out very strong, very, very strong tonight in the draft. We're also on Twitter. Our Twitter username is @PWRShow, @PWRShow. We're going to be reading some of those comments tonight, and be sure to follow us on Twitter, @PWRShow. We also have our own version of the draft going on, the PWR 2011 Draft, where tonight points did apply to the draft and to the matches that occurred live on Raw. Well, let's run down the list of draft picks for tonight, live on WWE Raw on the USA Network. SmackDown, as I said, scoring pretty big and getting some huge names, but Raw didn't fare as unfavorably as it may have seemed it would have early on in the night. The first pick of the night was John Cena. John Cena going over to WWE SmackDown Friday nights on Sci-Fi. The second pick, Rey Mysterio going over to WWE Raw. From there, number 3, Randy Orton to WWE SmackDown. Number 4, Mark Henry to SmackDown. Number 5, Sin Cara to SmackDown. Number 6, The Big Show to Raw. Number 7, Alberto Del Rio to Raw. And the final draft pick of the night was John Cena going back to WWE Raw. That one has a lot of people talking and a lot of people not too happy about what they thought might be happening over on the SmackDown side of things. And unfortunately, this may cloud the big advantage that SmackDown gained tonight and some big stars going over to SmackDown in light of Extreme Rules this Sunday on pay-per-view. Remember, Alberto Del Rio has a chance to win the World Heavyweight Championship this Sunday at Extreme Rules. He could be bringing that championship to SmackDown. As I said, we're going to be to Raw. As I said, we're going to be taking your phone calls. The number 347-996-5278. Follow the prompts when you call in here on Blog Talk Radio and raise your hand, if you will, to notify us that you want to speak on air. We'll take your call by area code. So we're going to announce your area code, and then you need to tell us your name and where you were calling from. This draft substantially more impactful than the 2010 draft, even with Cena going to SmackDown and then back to Raw. And what I think this shows tonight is a real focus by WWE on SmackDown. SmackDown, which has been performing pretty strongly over on the Sci-Fi Network, is now going to potentially perform even stronger than it has in the past. As I said, your Facebook comments will be included in this show as well, as we are going to be as interactive as possible. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report. Facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report. If you're following us or listening to us here on Blog Talk Radio, which all of you are, obviously, be sure to follow the show and favorite the show so that you never miss an episode, including when we join you again on 540 ESPN this Wednesday night. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to the phones, and let's go to our first caller who's coming to us from the 210 area code. Looks like somewhere down near San Antonio, Texas. Caller, you're live here on the air. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Actually, it's in San Antonio. This is Justin calling. How you doing?
I'm tremendous. How are you, Justin?
Doing very well.
Your thoughts on the WWE Draft tonight?
Overall, I thought it was good. I just wish Cena would stay on SmackDown. Looking at SmackDown, I mean, you really only have one, well, probably two good faces over there with Orton and Christian. Then I'm trying to see who will be over there, because the biggest heel left with Alberto Rio, so the second in line will be Cody Rhodes. So you think you probably will see a push for Cody Rhodes now over on that side of things. But overall, I thought it was good, and Raw's looking fine as well. But it's kind of obvious for Sunday for Christian to win the world title. What do you think?
I think that it does become a little more obvious, but let's not forget that there is a supplemental draft tomorrow at noon at WWE.com, so some more changes could happen, and I wouldn't expect to see Alberto Del Rio or Christian involved in that supplemental, but at the same time, I'm not sure anybody would have thought we would have seen the moves that happened tonight happen.
That's true. Yeah, I agree.
Justin, thank you very much for that call. And, again, you can join us on the phone lines at number 347-996-5278. We'll acknowledge you by area code, and let us know what your name is and where you're calling from. Caller from the 318 area code. I'm sorry, actually, caller from the 318 area code. Caller, you're live. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm Will. I'm from Natchitoches, Louisiana. How you doing, Damien?
Doing absolutely tremendous. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I just want to first off say, if people are upset by Cena first going to SmackDown and then going back to Raw, come on. It's obvious that why would they have their number one guy on their number two show? I mean, doesn't that make sense?
That makes sense, but let's not forget that's where John Cena started. That's where John Cena became as popular initially as he has gotten on Raw, and would have been fresh for SmackDown. And some talking about the play that would have been there with him and The Rock, and John Cena being on The Rock's show, SmackDown, which would have been fun. But
that's
really,
true. That's true that Cena made a name for himself on SmackDown, but if you really look at it, Cena became a star on Raw. The fact of the matter is I'm glad that John Cena stayed on Raw and Randy Orton went to SmackDown, because finally Randy Orton can be a number one guy on the show. He has always played number two to John Cena. Now he's finally got his own show. So if you look at it, it's great for both Raw and SmackDown, but I'm just kind of wondering, who can Randy Orton work with on SmackDown as a heel? Alberto Del Rio went over to Raw. So who is Orton going to work with as a heel? And better yet, what other faces are over on Raw from the push? John Morrison's just kind of bland, and the rest of them are a bunch of heels. They're going to have to turn somebody, or something's going to happen. But overall, was very upset with the draft at first, and then I was pleased.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you very much for that call, Will. And as we said, we are on Facebook, and we're taking your comments. We always do live conversation with you on Facebook and Twitter during live wrestling broadcasts. And a couple of comments on Facebook from John Cena's return to Raw at the end of the night in the draft. Luke Henderson saying that was boring and predictable. Wayne Pierce saying it was a poor way to end the show. Erwin Barrientos saying that's a mega fail. Dan Janoff saying, so Cena gets drafted by SmackDown and then goes back to Raw? That's just lazy writing. Chris Gunn asking, what's the point? And Jeremy Thibodeau saying, does Cena have blackmail on Vince after the brief move to SmackDown and the push for Cole? It's clear to me how much Cena means to the company. Just saying. Well, that's a lot of people not too happy with this move of John Cena back to Raw. And maybe the most sense of the world is made by a comment that Colton Ashley made here on our Facebook page saying, hope Rock whips some candy ass next week. You need that play. You need that play between The Rock and John Cena for however long it is going to go, or how often it's going to happen leading in to WrestleMania 28. Comments in our chat room. Bobby Boucher saying Orton should go to career killer. Now he goes heel and starts trying to crush the young guys. What do you mean? That's Triple H's job. Well, anyways, comments continuing to go for our hundreds of users in the Blog Talk Radio chat room. And let's go back to the phones. And this time we are going to go to a caller from the 269 area code. Caller, you're live. Your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, this is Bronny, and from Battle Creek, Michigan. Yeah, up until the last draft pick with Cena, I thought it was an overall good draft because it kind of was looking like they were putting like some faces over on SmackDown and bringing some heels to Raw. That way the established Raw heels could build up some new faces, and vice versa over on SmackDown. The established faces could build up some more heels over there. But then Cena coming back, it just throws a big kink in that idea. So I'm curious on why they did it and what's going on with that. And
I think it's obvious.
And what did you think about that, Damian? About before that and having that combination of going on.
Thank you very much for the call. Oh, sorry about that. Continue. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Oh, I was just going to say, what was your thoughts on that type of scenario that was looking like was happening before the Cena draft pick happened at the end, which means that there was 2 wasted draft picks?
Thank you very much for that call. You're correct. It indeed does equal out to 2 wasted draft picks, but I still think it's in WWE's best interest to keep John Cena on Raw. You're going to have The Rock involved. Why waste The Rock on a tape show that is SmackDown? And, that doesn't mean SmackDown's better or worse. Make your own decision on that, which many of you already had. But John Cena's got to be on Raw. Yes, they did waste 2 draft picks, but had they not started with Cena, would people have been as excited and interested about the overall episode of the draft and wondering what could really happen? Because when you look at those first 3 picks, it was pretty substantial. You had John Cena, you had Rey Mysterio, and Randy Orton, 3 of the biggest stars in WWE being drafted. And let's not forget the dialogue between John Cena and The Miz after Cena was drafted, which puts more emphasis on their match coming up Sunday at Extreme Rules, including John Morrison. Randy Orton also drafted to SmackDown, as we just said. We've got several comments from you guys on our Facebook page. Again, our Facebook page is facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report. Jason Carroll says, Orton to SmackDown, good. Take his boring headlock self over there with Super Cena. At this time, Cena was still part of the SmackDown roster. Brian Kahut, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, saying they're definitely trying to give SmackDown a hell of a push by sending some of the big dogs over for Raw. I'll still watch regardless of who's on what show. Ridge Salguero saying, I didn't see that one coming. I thought Orton was going to stay to be the face of Raw. Eamon Rogers, at the time, a little smarter than the rest it looks like, saying this confirms Cena is going back to Raw. Chris Gunn saying with Cena on SmackDown as well, I don't see the point of drafting Orton. So a lot of comments there. Finally, David Leifer saying taking all the Raw stars to SmackDown is a horrible idea. Nobody watches on Friday nights. That's actually a popular misconception. SmackDown does average between 3 and 4 million viewers on Friday nights. And let's not forget the DVR add-on that comes on top of that. They're pulling in great ratings. They're pulling in good viewership. It's a solid show. Now it doesn't reach the levels of Raw's 5.5 or so million viewers each week. But it is a show that does do well on Spike TV and does do well for WWE. Again, we're taking your phone calls. The number 347-996-5278. This is the post show for the WWE Draft, exclusively on Blog Talk Radio. We're going to be live on 540 ESPN, our home station, on 540 ESPN Wednesday night, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central Standard Time, with more detailed analysis of the 2011 WWE Draft with David Hero and the Kaz, along with myself. But for tonight, we wanted to give you the opportunity to chime in and tell us what you thought of the draft and those picks. And we'll go over those picks one more time for those of you just joining us, if you're joining us late. John Cena to SmackDown, then back to Raw. Rey Mysterio to Raw. Orton to SmackDown. Mark Henry and Sin Cara to SmackDown. Big Show and Alberto Del Rio to Raw. And the supplemental draft continues tomorrow at WWE.com. Next caller we're going to take is coming to us from the 832 area code. Caller from the 832 area code, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Yo, what up, Damien? It's Ricardo from Houston.
Ricardo, how are you?
I'm great. I'm just great.
What did you think of the draft tonight?
My thoughts on the draft tonight? The Cena thing, I saw coming through. I was like, dude, it has to be Cena or Taker because you have to have some big star, or you can't just ship them all to SmackDown. But the thing that got me the most is sending Alberto Del Rio to Raw. And you send your strongest heel to Raw, and what are you left with on SmackDown? You're going to push Cody Rhodes? Are you going to make Randy Orton a heel? Is Wade Barrett going to get the push? I don't know. It's very TNA-ish of them to send Alberto Del Rio to Raw. And by TNA-ish, I mean stupid. So I'm really upset with that.
Well, Ricardo, let me challenge you with this. Does this not give other talents the opportunity to step into an Alberto Del Rio spot? Because Alberto Del Rio is, 6, 8, 9 months deep into WWE time, and look at how high he has risen in that short period of time. WWE SmackDown's got a lot of potential talents. You mentioned Cody Rhodes. Now, I'm a Cody Rhodes mark, obviously, but you can't deny how much better Cody Rhodes has gotten, especially as a heel, over the last few weeks. And I think that the opportunities are there. You saw Mark Henry go heel tonight. You have the opportunities for some of those people to step up. The question is, and which I think is what you're asking, is will the viewing audience at home care enough about these characters to invest in them? And we'll find out.
Well, I thought Alberto Del Rio would win the world title going to a program with Randy Orton, which I thought would be great because, honestly, I don't think Christian can draw the numbers in ratings or ticket sales or whatever for SmackDown. So, whatever. Well, what do I know? It's a machine. They know what they're doing.
Well, Ricardo, but they can fail just as easily as they can succeed, and we've seen WWE fail many a time in the past. Thank you very much for that call, Ricardo. Again, the discussion continues in our chat room here on Blog Talk Radio, and WZFM is the username saying, no way Cena is going to be on a year-long program with The Rock and be on SmackDown. So comments continuing there about tonight's WWE Draft. I'm very intrigued to see what happens tomorrow in the supplemental draft at WWE.com, which is going to start at noon, because they could reshuffle the deck. And let's not forget the situation WWE was in before tonight. Let's not fool ourselves and think SmackDown was a great show as far as the talents available there. What I mean by that is the big loss of Edge, The Undertaker out injured, and you talk about those two as two of your biggest stars. We've still got Kane over on SmackDown, and I guess you could argue as to his impact on the program overall. You've still got the core. You've got Wade Barrett. You've got Drew McIntyre. Maybe, just maybe, this is going to be a situation where they can, show these talents' abilities in a more prominent role. Continue on the phones and go to a caller calling us from the 423 area code. Caller, you're live. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Zach, calling from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And
Zach, what do you think of the draft tonight from WWE?
I was pretty pleased with it. I didn't like how they used Cena twice for a pick. I was just wanting to know what your thoughts were on that.
Thank you very much for that call, Zach. I think it was, as a caller pointed out earlier, it was a waste of two picks, I guess. But I still think starting off that way, starting off with that huge pick of Cena, which nobody really expected, set the tone for the show and kept the intrigue going on the show. Now, I happen to have a little bit of experience, if you watch the Pro Wrestling Report draft, to be swerved at the end of the episode. It really does create intrigue, and it created intrigue for me tonight. I wondered if they would put Cena on SmackDown. I'm not sure how far-fetched it actually is, but let's again think John Cena makes the most sense on Raw. He makes the most sense on Raw because fans will tune in to see John Cena. A lot of fans may tune out because John Cena is on at the same time, but one other point that was made, and I think it's a valid point at this point, is Alberto Del Rio has been drafted to Raw, but hasn't he really wrestled on Raw for the last 5 or 6 weeks? So, the draft used to mean a ton more. Now, not so much, because you see a lot of cross-pollination, if you will, of the brands anyways. Let's go to our next caller, who's calling from the 678 area code. Caller, you are live. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, Damien. This is Austin, and I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia. How are you?
Austin, I'm absolutely tremendous. What did you think of the WWE Draft tonight?
I think overall it accomplished what it needed to do by putting a top babyface over on SmackDown, but I would argue that John Cena on SmackDown could have had the possibility of raising the SmackDown numbers possibly to that Raw level of 5 to 6 million viewers a week because of such a big draw that he is.
Possibly, Austin, but I will tell you this. SmackDown has a ceiling. Any show on Friday night in today's day and age has a ceiling, and WWE and Sci-Fi are aware of that ceiling, meaning the ratings are only going to be so good. And drawing what WWE does currently draw on SmackDown on Fridays, being one of the top-rated shows on Sci-Fi and winning several key demographics already, even with relatively lower ratings than Raw, is a success for WWE. So they don't have that need to put the huger talents or the larger talents over on SmackDown. Because remember back in the day of the draft, when the draft meant so much more, if you were on SmackDown, that meant you had to carry your own pay-per-view. If you were on Raw, that meant you had to carry your own pay-per-view. Now the pay-per-views are combined. So really the focus is only on touring for live event business and the program on Friday nights. No matter what, in general, when WWE comes to town, Raw is going to do a lot better than SmackDown will, but they're still going to draw people. And much like the ratings on Friday nights for SmackDown, they're still going to get probably the same number of viewers. SmackDown has seen a substantial ratings growth since moving to Sci-Fi, and I think that number is going to continue to be good as long as the product is good, and that means that's less about the stars that are already made and more about the stars that they're giving the opportunity to shine.
Those are fair points, and I must say that the Nelson family, I think, benefited tremendously from the draft tonight, so good luck to you and the rest of your draft through the year.
Thank you very much for that call, Austin, and the well wishes. Matter of fact, I've got 200 points now to David Hero's 185 tonight, scoring 140 points on the night to David Hero's 120 points on the night, again proving I've got the best overall roster in the draft. And we're actually more interested in, more so than our own draft, those of you out there who have your own drafts going on. We encourage you all to do that. You can still join in and start your own. Just follow us at PWR Draft on Twitter, at PWR Draft on Twitter, and let us know how your draft is going. And we'd like to welcome the 2010 PWR Fan of the Year, Jonathan Orchard, who is here in the Blog Talk Radio chat room and has started his own draft with, I believe, Blanchard Buzz on Twitter as well. And it looks like those point results are Blanchard Buzz coming out ahead with 225 to Jonathan Orchard's 210. Very close, very fun, very intriguing. We encourage all of you to join us in your own versions of the draft. We talked about Rey Mysterio being drafted to Raw tonight in the WWE Draft. Not much discussion on that, but we did have several dozen of you comment on our Facebook page about that move, Rey Mysterio being drafted to Raw. And Alexis Perez saying Rey and Sin Cara, future WWE Tag Team Champions. Well, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, though, because Sin Cara is on SmackDown. At the time, Sin Cara had not yet been drafted, to be fair to Alexis Perez. Let's see. Cyril Battle saying, bye-bye, Ray. SmackDown is 10 times better without you. Thumbs up. Wow, interesting. Duke Morris saying the reason it didn't work when Ray was drafted a few years ago, a comment made earlier, was because Cena was still on Raw and that it will work now. And it seems like a lot of people want to see that matchup between Rey Mysterio and Sin Cara. I am one of those people, by the way. A lot of comments about that, including Alex Rentowski and Kyle Kuzi-Turner, saying they want to see that Rey versus Sin Cara match. Finally, comment on that is from Eduardo Traslavina, saying, I say Rey will spend the rest of his career on Raw, while Sin Cara gets sent to SmackDown so he can work more on a fan connection. He's not the big star yet to stay on the flagship show. Plus, it looks like SmackDown got a lot better and younger Rey. So, interesting point, actually, they're made in that comment. So, Let's continue on the phones. Let's go to our next caller. Remember, we're going to acknowledge you by the area code from which you're calling from. We've got a few minutes left in the show and about 20 of you waiting to hop in on the phone lines. If we're not able to get to you tonight, we will be taking your calls when we enter the phone zone on our 540 ESPN radio show, which is Wednesday night this week. We're on ESPN radio each and every week, 2 solid hours talking about professional wrestling. And the Pro Wrestling Primetime TV show returns to the airwaves this week, and you can check that out on demand at pwrshow.com. Our next caller comes to us from the 240 area code. Caller, you're live. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello.
Caller from 240. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is John. I'm calling from Maryland.
John, what did you think of WWE's 2011 draft?
I thought it was good. I think the big story was basically SmackDown getting a lot of fresh faces, mixing it up. I think that since Alberto Del Rio got drafted off, Cody Rhodes is pretty much in line for a world title shot any minute now, and that's good news,
A Cody Rhodes fan you are?
Yep.
All right. Well, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Thank you very much for that call. Let's continue on the phone lines. Our next caller comes to us from the 309 area code. Caller, you're live. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Yo, what's up? This is Arthur calling from the Bloomington, Illinois area.
All right. What did you think of the draft tonight?
I think it was 50-50 for me because when they did the John Cena one, I was like cool with him going back to SmackDown because I think that he had some unfinished business there to deal with because he started there. And the one thing that I hated was him going back there. Now, as far as Ray going to Raw, I'm kind of happy that he did go to Raw because he did all he needed to do on SmackDown, winning the world title there. So now he needs to make a good start on a Raw, and that's winning that title.
Good point. Very good point. Rey Mysterio, former world champion, he has spent most of his time in WWE since the brand extension over on the SmackDown side of things. Let's go to our next caller who's calling us from the 563 area code. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
It's Michael from Iowa.
Michael, what did you think of the draft tonight?
I thought it was okay. Just like everyone else, I'm a little mad at the Cena thing. Big Show, with Big Show being tag team champion now with Kane, I still see Big Show appearing repeatedly on SmackDown too. With Cena going back to Raw and Del Rio being on Raw, I think it's going to be a foregone conclusion that Christian wins on Sunday. So I'd give tonight's Raw maybe just barely a pass. I wasn't a big fan of it, but it did enough to intrigue my interest.
Before John Cena was drafted back to Raw, would your rating of the show be the same as you just gave?
I probably would have liked it a little better had he not gone back to Raw because I was just a little disappointed.
Nope. You answered my question. Thank you very much for that call, Mike from Iowa. We appreciate you calling in. Again, we have our chat room going live here on Blog Talk Radio. And some comments here. Levi Thomason saying Cody Rhodes' mask is awesome. It makes him undashing. I got to say this about Cody Rhodes because it was brought up by our caller just a minute ago and lots of discussion about it in the chat room. It's really the true way stories should be built in wrestling. You think about how ridiculous that dashing Cody Rhodes thing was, which probably was only done to get us to right now, where Cody, I think, is at least somewhat more respected than he ever was in WWE. And who would have ever thought that when you take out the team of Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase, that Cody Rhodes would be the standout star right now? For one, is a surprise to me. Again, we're on Twitter. Our Twitter username is @PWRShow. We are trying to track through some of your comments, but we've gotten literally nearly 1,000 mentions from you guys tonight on Twitter. We want to welcome all of our new Twitter followers as well, so we're trying to get through it. A couple of them here. K. Holt Jr. saying, Ray and Sin Cara cannot be on the same show. No need to put them two in any kind of program. Campbell Andrew saying, now it sets up Cena to beat Alberto Del Rio for the World Heavyweight Championship, which Alberto Del Rio will win at Extreme Rules, and then face The Rock for the title at WrestleMania 28. Interesting. Ray is on Raw to lose to He Who Is Awesome, I guess referring to The Miz, King D51 saying, and Bunda 713 saying, sending ADR to SmackDown is very TNA-ish. Lots of discussion about TNA, rather, going on tonight all over the world. But some rumors coming out of that company that we'll talk about more on Wednesday night on 540 ESPN and streaming here again as well on Blog Talk Radio. Let's go to our next caller who's calling us from the 309 area code. Caller, you're live. All right. Actually, let's go to the caller from the 740 area code. Caller from the 740, you're live.
Hey, Damien. How you doing tonight?
Tremendous. How are you?
I'm good, after just kind of settling down after watching the draft. And I got to say, it's very even keel for me because you open the show with that big Cena announcement. He's going back to SmackDown, which opens the door on Raw seemingly for the first time in, 5 years for a new talent to break through on the flagship show? And then you swerve and put him back on Raw.
Let me challenge you on this, though. I've talked about how much that may have existed in the past, but if you look at the last 12 to 14 months in WWE, look at all the new talents that have been given the opportunity. Maybe it didn't stick with some, but who are there now? You got Sheamus. You got John Morrison stepping up, Dolph Ziggler stepping up, Alberto Del Rio, The Miz, obviously. I'm not sure this argument that Cena, quote-unquote, holds people back is still there because it's been quite a while since John Cena has held the WWE Championship and at the same time held people back, at least from what we can tell in a very obvious fashion on Raw.
Do you mind if I come back at you real quick, though?
No, go right ahead, please.
How much of that, though, is out of necessity? Because Shawn's gone. Taker is does 2 or 3.
There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that at all. WWE had to do it, had to react. But as Jim Ross said, over the last 2 years, WWE is 5 years behind in building those talents. They should have been building those talents years ago. And keep in mind, it's also the talent's job to put themselves in a place to be built. Everybody likes to blame things on the writers, blame things on WWE, and I'm talking about you specifically, but the talent has an opportunity and has the responsibility to step up too. Look at what Zack Ryder's doing on YouTube. I guarantee you in the next 3 months we're going to see WWE utilize Zack Ryder more effectively because he is building his brand and an audience for himself that will care about him. But at that same time, Ryder will have a responsibility to step it up in the ring, step it up on the mic, and make people want to pay to see him, not just watch him on YouTube. And that's not a knock on him, just an observation. We do need to move on to our next caller here. We appreciate the time. Sorry to cut you off there. Let's go to our caller calling from the 917 area code. Caller, you're live. What's your name?
Hey, hi, Damien.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I'm John from Queens, New York.
All right, John, what'd you think of the draft tonight?
Oh, man, I absolutely have to say, to me personally, it sucked. It was really honestly, it was really, obvious. I was really cool with the whole John Cena thing in the beginning. I was like, all right, John Cena's going to be there and Del Rio's going to stay. And then Del Rio went over to Raw. I was like, right there, you knew something was going to happen because it's already been said that there's probably going to be a program with them guys over in SummerSlams. You know what I mean? And then, of course, you're not going to keep Ray and Sin Cara together. That's something. Even if they were even thinking about putting them two together, it would be something special. They wouldn't just throw it out like a Monday or a Friday night special.
Your point is valid, and but a lot of people want to see. Many people have talked about, and the reason is so painfully obvious that people see this. And you can draw your own conclusions on that. But, talking about the Rey Mysterio versus Alberto Del Rio match, talking about the Rey Mysterio versus Sin Cara match, when you look at it, Rey and Sin Cara would put on one amazingly entertaining wrestling showcase if given the opportunity. And I can't think that they're not going to be given that opportunity before before Rey Mysterio moves along from his WWE time. Let's go to another caller, which is probably, unfortunately, going to have to be our last caller, calling from the 320 area code. Caller from the 320, what's your name and where you calling from?
I'm Martin. I'm from Minnesota.
Hey, how are you? What'd you think of the draft tonight?
Well, here's the thing, Damien. For the first time ever... Yeah, Hashmark, here's the thing. I'm sorry. For the first time, I really just did not care about the draft because they put the draft at the worst possible time, right after WrestleMania, which is the time where they, like you said, cross-pollinate the most to put over the WrestleMania storylines. You had, over the past several weeks, you had, Christian, Edge, Del Rio, Lay Cool, Rey Mysterio, who are all technically SmackDown guys on Raw. So for the first time ever, I just did not care who went where because they'll probably just crisscross in a couple months anyway. So.
Exactly. And a couple months is being generous. I would venture to say in the next 2 weeks you're going to see a lot of that cross-pollination continue. To sum up tonight's Raw, and we're going to talk about the other things that happened on Raw, but Blanchard Buzz, one of our followers on Twitter, again, our Twitter name is @PWR Show, and for all the draft news, follow us at @PWR Draft. But Blanchard Buzz saying some tremendous things coming out of the WWE Draft. The R-Truth promo, the Lay Cool split, Karma debut, which is Awesome Kong's WWE name. We finally got a name for her tonight. And the Randy Orton Del Rio swap. All that and so much more will be discussed this Wednesday night on our ESPN radio show. That's going to be at 11 Eastern, 10 Central on 540 ESPN, streaming live at ESPNMilwaukee.com and PWRshow.com and right here on Blog Talk Radio. Also just found out Mark Henry is on Twitter. If you want to follow the bad guy on SmackDown, his Twitter username is MH61271. MH61271. Mark Henry on Twitter. Thank you so much for all of you joining us. Continue the conversation in the chat room here at Blog Talk Radio. And if we weren't able to get to your call tonight, join us Wednesday live on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com. This is Damian Nelson saying thank you so much for tuning in to the Pro Wrestling Report post-show of the 2011 WWE Draft on Blog Talk Radio. We'll see you Wednesday night.